Good morning, everybody. We are moving right along here to the next group of defensive ends in this draft. And today's going to be pretty quick here because we're doing defensive ends, 3-4 ends specifically, that I believe have a good chance of going in the day two. So round two, round three. As of right now, I think that there's only two of them. So this video will cover those two, and that'll be that. So obviously things can change. Obviously people can move up the board, people can move down the board. Don't be surprised if something happens, but as of right now, it seems to me that these are the two guys in this category that are going to be day two picks. I think one's going to go in round two and the other's probably going to go in round three. That would be my estimation right now. The guy I think who's probably going to go in round two is Tuli Tuipulotu of USC. We're a little familiar with this guy if we're Huskies fans, I guess. I know I am, so I know of him. And there's a lot of interesting things going on with Tuli. More than anything, I just kind of want this guy to explain to me exactly what he is supposed to be. I'm a little bit confused about Tuli, and I don't really know if he makes sense for what the Seahawks are trying to do right now, even though I do think he's a pretty good prospect. So let's pull this apart a little bit here. First of all, he's really young. He's only 20. That's very, very young. He's probably going to improve a lot over the next couple years. At the combine, and this is kind of the big thing to me, he measured in at 6'3", 266 pounds. I believe his playing weight was around 290, so he dropped serious weight. At one point, anyway, when he was at USC, he measured in at 290, and I don't think his playing weight was ever anywhere close to 266. So this guy's dropping weight. And that's the first thing I'm kind of going to get hung up on here, right? Because, okay, if he was 280, 290, that's perfect for being a 3-4 end. But 266, that tells me you're trying to be an edge. But 266, typically speaking, is still too heavy for an edge in a 3-4 defense. It's not really what I'm looking for anyway, because especially with this guy who isn't an amazing edge prospect to begin with. So what are you trying to be here, man? Did you just drop weight so you could do the combine and then you didn't do the combine? Are you trying to get down to 250? Like, what's going on here? So the way Tuli played in college, I would be interested in bringing him in as a 3-4 end, but if he's really trying to embrace his role as an edge, I don't know then. I'm not so interested then. And that's very possible, by the way, if you look at his production in 2022. Anyway, his arm length is okay, hands just over 10 inches. And the big boards are relatively in unison here. He's like a mid to late second rounder. ESPN has him at the early third, or excuse me, the mid third. But most of the big boards say he's a mid to late second rounder. I think that's probably going to be the case. He's been very productive over the last 2 years, especially 2022. I want to highlight this. 22 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks in 14 games. 2 forced fumbles, 3 pass deflections. The main strike against him, honestly, was just how bad USC's defense was, but I think we all know that's not really his fault. I think we know that's a Lincoln Riley thing. So what can we say about Tuli? You know, he's got a great frame. He looks like an NFL player. His build is very, like, dense is the word that a lot of scouts are using about him right now. He wore many different hats at USC. He was in kind of a rusher off the edge. He was playing from the interior. He did a lot of different positional stuff at USC, inside and outside, and had success at both places. Got a very powerful punch. He's got great hands, knows how to use his hands really well in the trench battles. He sheds blockers really well. He gives high effort. He's good at what some people call like the second chance or third chance plays, where like, okay, your initial move to try to get to the quarterback didn't work. Oh, wait a minute, okay, here's my second chance to go make a play happen here, or maybe go make a play against a broken play that is currently in development. He's pretty good at that kind of stuff. He shows a cerebral understanding of where to be. And again, that improvement he showed in 2022 is legit. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, my main hang-up is just what would he do in a 3-4? Is he really going to slim down to the point where he's an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, like an edge rusher or a Leo? Is he trying to be like a 5-tech who can flex into 3-tech like Michael Bennett was? That's kind of the way I'm feeling about it right now, right? Like Tuli It seems like he's trying to be like Michael Bennett. And Michael Bennett was great, but what would he do in this defense? Like, I don't know if that really works that well as a 3-4 end. In fact, I'm inclined to believe it probably doesn't work. He doesn't have great lateral mobility either. He could end up being like a tweener, where he's too big to be an edge, and he's not lengthy enough to be an edge, but he's also not heavy enough to be a interior lineman. I don't know. But overall, while I think this is an intriguing prospect that somebody will probably spend a second round pick on, I think he's going to end up playing a Michael Bennett type role somewhere in a 4-3, where he's a 5 tech who moves to 3 tech on pass rush downs. And that's just not what we need here. That's not going to fit here. So unless Tuli wants to bulk back up to like 280, 290, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. He's worth the second round pick, I suspect, just not really for this team. I'm not really into him as is. Okay, the other guy we're going to take a look at in this video here is another kind of controversial figure, Gervon Dexter from Florida. This is a guy who I was high on at one point. As I looked more into him, I got less and less interested. The first time I really noticed him was watching the Florida-Kentucky game earlier last year, where Kentucky won, but Gervon Dexter was making a lot of plays. He really impressed me in that game. I kept noticing him doing destructive things in that game. And ever since then, I was like, okay, second round pick maybe. But as time has gone on, I've started to notice the problems here. So, Florida Gator, 21 years old, so still quite young. The main thing about him is his size. He's big, 6'6", 310 pounds. That is bordering on like nose tackle size. You're starting to get up to like nose tackle size there. And that's a lot bigger than most 3-4 ends. However, his athletic profile is still that of a guy who can probably do 3-4 end for the most part. His arms are passable. Hands, 9.5 inches, sure. Ran a 4.88 40, which is good for a person of his size. 10.81 10-yard split, sure. And he was fairly explosive in testing as well. 31-inch vertical, 9'2" broad, pretty good. 7.5 second 3-cone, 22 bench presses. That's all right. That's pretty good. I mean, if you're 310 pounds and you're doing that, you're probably doing something right. So most big boards have him in the 3rd. PFF has him in the 4th. And ESPN has him in like the 5th or 6th. So there is some variance here. The database, which is the aggregate website, of course, has him at 69th. So my expectation is that he's going to be an early to mid 3rd round pick. Maybe he slips into the late 3rd, but I think he's going to go in that 3rd round. There was a time when I viewed him as a 2nd round pick, but I think that time is well past. Played in 26 games over the last 2 years. He's actually been pretty productive. Over 105 tackles, 9.5 for loss. Not necessarily a huge playmaker in terms of like his production. He's only got 4.5 sacks. But decent production in terms of just like making plays on the ball carrier. He's been part of some not great, but not terrible defenses at Florida, by the way. 74th overall, 87th overall. So there's some stuff in the positive and stuff in the negative with Gervon Dexter. Overall, though, I feel like Gervon Dexter is probably going to remind people in the negative about one particular former Seahawk, which is LJ Collier. As much as this guy is more physically impressive and more capable than LJ Collier, I do think he'll be a lot better than that. There's just one thing I am having a hard time getting past now that I've seen it as much as I have. That being said, I mean, look, 6'6", 310 pounds, that's pretty legit. Normally you would look at that and say, oh, that guy's going to be a slug. Gervon Dexter is not a slug in the middle there. He's great penetrating. He shows the ability to shed blockers and make the play on a running back. Shows the ability to slip off blockers rushing the passer. This is not somebody who just hangs out in the middle and, he's basically, I'm fat, move me, try to move me. No, he's in there making plays and penetrating, absolutely. For a 310-pounder, he tested well, and he showcases these testing numbers on the field. He's a very good athlete for a 310-pounder. And he has a little bit of flexibility as a pass rusher. It's not just bull rushing. He can swim. He can convert speed to power. He's got some stuff in the arsenal. Not a ton, but more than enough for a guy who's 310 pounds. Generally speaking, that's going to get you most of the way there, right? He's got good chase down skills when finishing plays. I know he didn't rack up massive backfield stats when he was at Florida, but he does show good chase down skills, so there is definitely some stuff to like. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of stuff to not like. He gets out leveraged a lot due to his height. Like when you're 6'6", you're gonna lose the leverage battle a lot. And Gervon Dexter is not really shown to be somebody who can overcome that as much as you would like. He does get bullied by double teams. If you double team him, he can just get like washed out of the play basically. So if you're thinking about using him as like a nose tackle, that's probably not going to happen. And given some of his other limitations, that may be where he ends up projecting to. He gets stuck on blocks sometimes. Sometimes he'll like, his first move doesn't work. And then he just doesn't really know what to do. And that is going to happen a lot in the NFL. You need to have moves on moves on moves, and Dexter doesn't seem like he has that. I think the main concern with Dexter as a player is just he's very slow off the snap. And this is something that I started to notice the more you try to watch him from snap to snap. He just doesn't have great burst. And that's often going to make all the difference in these battles, how fast you get off the snap. And that was what we ran into with LJ Collier, and I'd kind of rather not run into it here. And by the way, even though he does flash penetration skills, he is very inconsistent right now, although that maybe makes some sense given the fact that he's so young. And he's one of these guys who we don't know how much effort he's given. A lot of people think he's not a high-effort player. So there's potential here. I think he could work in a 3-4. I think he could play 3-4 despite being oversized. But he's got a lot to work through. He's got to start giving more effort. He's got to improve his technique. And he's got to improve his burst, which is like noticeably really bad. So at the end of the day, I've been turned off on him. I would be interested if he makes a surprise drop to the 4th round or later. Otherwise, I'm out. All right, so that's my look at day 2 defensive ends. Tomorrow, we move on to day 3. See you guys later.